Good morning. I hope everyone is doing well. And this will probably be the last video that you have to listen and watch that I put up. So we are getting very close to the end. We are almost there, and you guys have been doing great with the distance learning. So basically today we're going to do day 2 of Unit 13. So on Monday you did arithmetic sequences, which means you are adding to get to the next number. And now we're going to do the other type of sequence, which is a geometric sequence. So basically a geometric sequence is just a sequence of numbers that have a common ratio, meaning that you multiply to get to the next number. Okay, so arithmetic you add, geometric you multiply to get to the next number. So if you look at this first example, okay, you have 5, 15, 45. Now, a lot of times they're not going to tell you which type of sequence it is, so you need to figure it out. So I would always try and add to see if it's an arithmetic sequence first. So we all know that 5 plus 10 is 15, right? But then remember, you always check the next two to make sure that it follows suit. So now when you go to 15 and 45, you say, well, wait a second. 15 plus 10 would be 25. The next one is 45. It cannot be an arithmetic sequence. If that's the case, then you are a geometric sequence. You need to figure out, all right, well, what am I multiplying? So sometimes it's going to be easy to figure out. Okay, we all know that 5 times 3 is 15. And then you would just check, well, what is 15 times 3? 15 times 3, yes, is 45. So therefore, yes, our common ratio would be 3. Okay? There are times, though, that it might not be as clear. Okay, so like in the next one. In the next one, we have numbers that are going down. So they start at 1, but then the next number is 1/2. And then the next number is 1/4. Okay? The most important thing about geometric sequences, you cannot say, oh, I divided, right? Because we all know that 1 divided by 2 would be 1/2. So if you said my R is 2, though, you would say, well, wait a second, that doesn't make sense because 1 times 2 means the second number would be 2. Okay, so one important thing about geometric is it's always multiplying. It's never dividing. And if your numbers go down, that means you are multiplying by a fraction or a decimal. Okay? So sometimes, for this one, it's kind of easy because we can figure out what we are multiplying by. But let's say you look at these numbers and you're like, I can't figure out what I'm multiplying by. So that's where you just use this to figure out what the ratio is. You take the second term and you divide it by the first term. Okay? So that means in your calculator, you would be putting 1/2 divided by 1, and whatever that number is would be your common ratio. So if I did 1/2 divided by 1, it tells me that my answer is 0.5. So I did it with these two. So now I'm going to do it with the next two consecutive just to make sure that it's still going to be 0.5. So you take the second term, technically. So in this case, I'm going to take the 1/4 first, divided by 1/2, because that one comes right before it. And you should see when you do 1/4 divided by 1/2 that you get 0.5, which means your common ratio is 0.5, or you can write it as 1/2. So with common ratios and geometric sequences, that's really the only case where it can get a little tricky. You always have to think to yourself, okay, I'm multiplying, and if my numbers go down and get smaller, that means I must be multiplying by a fraction or a decimal. Okay? Now, the next thing we could do with these is, well, yes, there's a formula to figure out. So if you want to try to find the 10th term, just like we did with arithmetic, there was a formula. The geometric formula says AN equals A1 times R, which is the common ratio, raised to the, so this is an exponent, n minus 1. So AN is the term you're finding. A1 again is your first term in the sequence. Your R is your common ratio. So yes, you need to figure out your common ratio before you could do this formula. And then N is the number that you want to find. So let's try one. Find the 12th term of the geometric sequence 3, 6, 12, 24. So again, right off the bat, I always write down my formula. A1 times R to the N minus 1. Now I went straight to writing down the geometric formula because right here they gave you a hint. They told you it was a geometric sequence. Sometimes the questions will tell you that, sometimes they won't. You need to figure out, am I adding or am I multiplying? Okay, so AN is what you're looking for. We're looking for let's write down everything we have. We are looking for the 12th term, that means N is 12. We need the first term, which is A1, which is right here in the formula. When we plug it in, is 3. And then the only other thing we need is the R, the common ratio. So 3 times what is 2? 3 times what is 6? Give you the answer. 6 times what is 12? 12 times what is 24? Our common ratio is 2. Okay, so we're looking for, remember here, this is just a placeholder. We're looking for A sub 12. That just stands for the 12th term. Equals A1, which is 3, times R, I always put the R in parentheses, raised to the N, which is 12, minus 1. That's just part of the formula, N minus 1, as your exponent. So now in the calculator, you do 3 times 2 raised to the 12 minus 1 we know is 11, so we could just plug it straight in, which means that our 12th term is 6,144. Okay. All right, let's try one more. Find the 10th term of the sequence. So this is the one we did before, where we found our common ratio. So we're looking for the 10th term. That is my N. A1 we have is our first term. Right here is a 1. And our common ratio, when we did this one before, we said that the common ratio was 0.5 or 1/2. So 0.5. So formula, AN equals A1 times R to the N minus 1. So we're looking for A sub 10. Our A1 is 1. Our R is 0.5. And our N is 10. Therefore, it's 10 minus 1. So plug in your calculator. 1 times 0.5 raised to the 10 minus 1 is 9. So your answer comes out to really big decimal, 0.001953125. So you could write that whole decimal. You would not round it, so 0.001953125. Or press math, enter, enter, and it'll change it to 1/512. Okay. I hope that was easy for everybody. I will post your assignment. I will not be collecting this one. Your only work for this week was the arithmetic stuff, which I assigned on Monday, and I gave you till Friday to complete it. So the geometric stuff is for you. I will post the worksheet so you can see it and try it. And then the very last thing that you will have to do for this class, I will post on Monday. And it'll just be a 5-question multiple choice assessment on forms, just like the other ones were. And yes, geometric will be on there. So that's why you should try it. Okay? Let me know if you have any questions. I hope you have a great day. Bye.